Joanne Kellington is a teaching and learning consultant for Education Bradford. She specialises in behaviour and attendance at Key Stage 3, advising teachers across the LEA on good practice in behaviour management.
Now think about a language of choice that can apply to anything in the classroom.
This programme looks at the guidance Joanne offers to one teacher keen to learn new strategies for managing her class.
We're often asked by teachers, why are these pupils misbehaving? And we tend to throw the question back to them and say, why do you think they're misbehaving? And the same answers come up time and time again. They are bored, they can't access the learning, they're not engaged in the lesson, they're using the lesson more like a social playground. As soon as they're bored, they think of other ways to get their teacher's attention, which is usually through misbehaviour. So it's about the teachers thinking about what can I do to counteract that? How can I make my lesson more engaging? Am I differentiating the lesson and setting boundaries, setting routines so that the children know what is expected of them in the classroom?
Joanne will be working with Claire Hewitt, a newly qualified modern foreign languages teacher at Parkside School near Bradford. Claire's chosen to teach some of the more challenging pupils, and she's keen to develop strategies to get the best out of them.
What else can you ask for?
D's. No jeans.
Right, okay. So how do you say blue?
Bleu.
So on, bleu. Something else. Two more things then. One of my targets for when I became an NQT was to take some bottom sets, and I volunteered to do that. But what I didn't realise when I offered to do it was the problems I would encounter with them. There's a lot of low-level disruption, a lot of shouting out, and it's that I want to try and get a grip of, to try and motivate the groups a bit more. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I want some ideas. By working with Jo, I think she'll give me some ideas on how to tackle the little things that cause the big problems. So if I deal with a low-level disruption now, I won't have the bigger problems later. I think sometimes you just can't deal with it on your own. You have to tell somebody.
Hi Claire, I'm
Hi.
Jo. I'm from the Key Stage 3 team, behaviour and attendance consultant. I'm coming in to work to observe a class. How's it going in terms of behaviour?
I have 2 bottom sets that I have a few behaviour issues in, which
Right.
I think you're going to observe one of them. So that'll
Is
be...
that the year 9?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be quite useful to get some feedback on what I can try with them.
When you say you've got some issues with them, in terms of what in particular?
They tend to be quite disruptive and they don't listen at all.
Right.
So it's trying to keep the low-level disruption down.
Do you think that leads to them going off task because they haven't got a very good grasp of the language?
I think that's basically it. They think they don't need it, so why should we bother?
Would it be okay if I came in and had a look at this group?
Yeah.
And then if we meet up after the lesson,
Yeah.
and we'll just see how you felt about it and
Okay.
see what I think as well.
That's great.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Joanne will observe Claire teaching a French lesson to a bottom set Year 9 class.
Okay, allez, entrez, s'il vous plaît.
My main focus is to go and observe the group and see how Claire engages with the group, see what sort of relationship she's got with the group, because that tends to be the basis of behaviour management. I'm going to be looking at how the pupils interact with each other. Are they happy to work on their own independently, or are they quite reliant on Claire? I tend to do a general observation, and then we'll look at 2 or 3 areas to target for the second observation, and we'll look at how to implement different strategies.
Right, can you put your feet down on the floor, please, James? Sit on your chair properly. Josh, the same to you. Michael, Chris, if you can't stop talking, I'm going to get rid of one of you. Tom, you need to pay attention. Josh, how do you expect to play if you haven't done what I've asked you to do? We've said it in French, we've said it in English, and you've still not done it. Do not shout out. I'm only going to ask people with their hands up. Chris. Michael, can you explain to Josh what he's supposed to do, please?
How did you think that went?
Awful. I was really embarrassed. They're just a really challenging group, I find. And I don't know what to do with them.
What did you find the most challenging in that lesson?
Keeping them quiet whilst you're trying to do things.
Yeah.
It's just the low-level disruption,
Yeah.
like I said before.
But it's it's high frequency, it's
Yeah,
happening all the
yeah.
time, isn't it? Just from watching it seems though they were desperate for your attention, a lot of them.
They
They wanted you to
very
talk to them,
attention
which is good.
Yeah.
It's just now sort of refocusing it in a positive way so that they're getting attention from you for their poor behaviour.
Yeah.
So it's trying to turn that around so you're giving them attention for what they're doing well.
Counts, excellent. What I want to do now is, you've done some practice on numbers. Why do you think you need to practice your numbers?
You led the lesson for 60 minutes, didn't you? It was totally teacher-led.
Yes.
If they haven't got a good grasp of the language, it's hard for them to go off and do tasks
Yeah.
on their own. What you could try is maybe doing some paired learning, holding up the
Flashcards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, I think there was 20 in the class, one person out of 20 is answering. If you say, right, you've got 10 minutes, there's the card in twos, and then they've got to come up with an answer. So if one person doesn't know, hopefully the other person will. So at least then you've got 10 answers come in.
Right.
And every hand should be up. That's what you want.
Yeah.
So you tell them what you want
Right.
out of the lesson. Can you explain the point system to me?
Yeah, they have a little Eiffel Tower in the back of the books. And once they've got 6 points, they get a credit. Timmy, c'est combien? C'est excellent, un point, très très bien. Le petit. Petit, excellent, un point, fantastique. And they build up credits and they're going to be able to spend them in a shop where they can buy things. So they all want to get points because they all want to get credits to spend in the shop.
I could hear them saying, we get a point, do we get a point for
No,
that? Do we get a point
they're really
for that?
keen on getting points and credits.
And I would sell that.
Yeah.
Sell this points to them because they all want it.
Yeah.
And if they don't get enough of it, they'll stop wanting the points. Another thing I'd suggest is movement around the classroom.
I tend to stay in a box.
You tend to stay here. Just try and move around the tables.
Yeah.
And then also, because this group you never really get near to them.
No.
And sometimes just being there stops the behaviour happening.
Yeah.
So as you're walking around with your cars, just do it as you're walking.
Yeah.
And I think you're more accessible then to all the groups. Sometimes, you know, at the beginning there was someone with his rubber. And sometimes if you'd have just stood next to him, that would have been enough. And just discreetly, you take it away from him.
Yeah.
And he knew we were messing about. And if you'd have been walking around the room, you could have done that. And then you wouldn't have had to stop the flow of the lesson. You'd have just done it discreetly. He wouldn't be embarrassed. Well, he probably loved it anyway.
No, I think he does like it.
But it just goes with the flow of the lesson. And if you're walking around, you can mop up everything as you're going along. And if someone's talking, if you go up to him, sometimes just putting your hand on the desk as well.
Yeah.
You're not actually speaking to him, so you're still teaching the whole of the class.
But he knows that
you're there.
Right.
Again, it's just using your physical presence in the classroom. And again, by walking around, you're going to create that. And you can pick up a lot of the things that are going on, the pen tapping, the swinging on the chair, which is all going on, isn't it?
Yes.
And I know you can see it, but if you were to pick up everything in that classroom, you won't get any teaching done.
No, I know.
At one point you said, don't shout out. And one thing you could try is turn it around and say, rather than don't shout out, hands up. So, because as soon as you say don't, for some reason kids like to do it.
Yeah.
It's like don't touch a hot plate. They touch the hot plate, don't they? If you try and make it, turn the language from don'ts to do's.
I don't want you to talk. Tom, you are not using this board again. Do not shout the answers out.
Rather than saying, don't shout out, hands up please, and you're teaching them what you want them to do. You're teaching them that you want their hands up. And if they do shout out, ignore whatever they've said.
Right.
Rather than saying, don't shout out, ignore it. But thank you for putting it,
That's getting it right and putting the hand up.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you were to think of 2 or 3 things you wanted to put in that class, or not to put in, to try out on Thursday, what would you be happy doing?
They're walking around the classroom whilst I'm doing activities or whatever.
Try that out on Thursday.
Yeah.
So if the teacher, obviously your normal lesson, but really go for moving around the classroom.
Right.
I'll put a pedometer on you, see if you do 10,000 steps.
Okay, well, that's
I've just completed 2 miles. So that's quite an obvious one, isn't it? Is there anything else?
I'll just try and the positive praise, basically.
As soon as they do anything right, no matter how small it is, praise them.
Yeah.
And just for one lesson, try and ignore what they're doing wrong, but putting in the praise. I mean, you usually say 6 praises to every 1 correction.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they're doing something that needs correcting, you've got to do it.
Yeah.
But just praise and praise as much as you can. And then as soon as they start getting your attention through the praise, it can help to turn the behaviour around. Right. Like I said, this class they're not going to change overnight. It will take 2 or 3 weeks. It's just a case of doing it and see if we can actually improve the behaviour.
Okay.
It's a few days later and Jo has returned to Parkside to see how Claire is putting some of her suggestions into practice.
These behaviours are very, very typical. Every teacher's going through this. Lots of calling out, lots of children off task. I think it goes right back to what's in it for the kids. The kids need to want to be in the classroom. They need a really good relationship with the teacher.
Can you sort your shirt out for me, please? Tuck it in before you sit down, Damien. So we're going to revise the clothes and colours again today. You've got to be perfect, Chris, yes? Absolutely perfect.
A lot of low-level disruption, I'd say, is about attention seeking. They want the attention of the teacher, which can only be a good thing, but it's about refocusing them, so that you only give them attention for the positive behaviour. For example, when they put their hands up, when they do as you ask, when they answer a question, etc. Rather than giving the attention for negative behaviour, the calling out, the walking around the classroom, the throwing things around the room, because that is what you want. You're feeding the behaviour. And the only way you can actually change behaviour is through praise and lots of rewards.
Just checking your credits. There you go. This team then, 2 points each. Everyone else can have a point each. That was excellent. Excellent. You've got your 6 credits, so you need to get another 4 points. Yeah, to get another credit. Okay.
Another strategy that I've suggested to Claire is to have more presence in the classroom by moving around the desk.
Listen, Damien. What we need to do...
Now again, it's difficult in some classrooms because the desks are quite compact and there isn't the space to move around. But just by moving around the classroom lets the children know you're around. Also, you can use your physical presence, again, to be proactive, and sometimes just by standing near a child is enough to stop them misbehaving. With Claire's group, it's particularly important that she teaches them new behaviours because, like Claire would admit, there's a lot of calling out. What she needs to do here is teach them that the way to answer a question is to put their hand up, and the only way you can actually teach this is through praising those who are doing it. So when people call out, to ignore them and actually go to the person who's got the hand up and praise them for having the hand up. You've got your hand up, thank you, and then take the answer from them.
What's the word for how much it costs? Levez la main. Levez la main. C'est combien? Excellent.
You need to think about the basics of actually managing behaviour, which is building a relationship with the class. That is fundamental. If you want to work with the class, particularly a challenging one, you need to have a solid relationship where the children love being in your classroom, they enjoy engaging with you, you show them that you enjoy engaging with them, and you make them welcome into your classroom as well. And I cannot emphasise that enough. Get to know your pupils, particularly the ones who are more challenging. Find time and invest your time with the most challenging pupils and show a genuine interest.
What are you going to get? What vouchers are you going to get? I'm trying to get them all before Christmas, so would you be able to spend them before Christmas?
My advice to Claire is she needs to keep practising and persevering and have a lot of patience with them because it is very, very hard to turn around a challenging group.
Most people have finished now. I've been round and I've checked most people's work. You were all more or less on the right tracks. 1 point pour chaque personne, okay? 1 point pour chaque personne. Fantastique.